Hello, Lisa and I, Björn Rungva from KS, are back with a case of how the municipality of Haugesund has worked with ethical guidelines. This is part of a series of small videos funded through EEA grants, which we are helping ACOR and AMR with. It's a pleasure to come to you today in the form of this video. Lisa, why did you choose Haugesund as a case, and what characterize their guidelines?
Haugesund is a town with nearly 40,000 inhabitants in Rogaland County in western Norway. It is one of Norway's 356 municipalities. The Municipal Council of Haugesund adopted the ethical guidelines in 2018. They were updated in 2018. Most Norwegian, close to 100% of Norwegian municipalities have their ethical guidelines. Many Norwegian municipalities build their approach to ethics on local governments on the recommendations from KS. Typical ethical guidelines are broad work, and the same guidelines apply to elected as well as employed representatives. Frequently, the topics which you address in this seminar is transparency, conflicts of interest, and incompatibility. They are both segments in general ethical guidelines serving as a framework. We have chosen the case of Haugesund because they combine guidelines for both elected and employed officials. They are inspired by the KS recommendation. Ethics is communicated, promoted, and ethical conduct is monitored. Their guidelines bring together many topics in a holistic framework. Main issues dealt with in Haugesund's ethical guidelines are, for instance, transparency, conflicts of interests, preventing corruption, and reaction to breach of ethical guidelines. In addition, there is about 15 more issues.
Why has Haugesund adopted ethical guidelines? How do they use them?
Well, as I said, close to 100% of Norwegian municipalities have ethical guidelines, even if it's only a recommendation. It's not mandatory according to the law. About the set of recommendations that KS published on how local governments best can prevent unethical behavior and corruption. We have shared them before, and we see that Haugesund has their ethical guidelines are they serve the purpose of the KS what KS outlines in its recommendation. That is, they spell out the local government's values. They give clear guidance on expected conduct of councillors, managers, and staff in various situations. They have been debated in the council and made public. They are specific on how elected officials, managers, and staff should handle conflicts of interest to let public interest prime over private considerations. They give detailed rules for handling of incompatibility to prevent conflicts of interest. They are enforced through reaction to breaches.
But formulation of ethical guidelines is only a first step. How are they communicated, monitored, and enforced in Haugesund?
The local government regularly surveys knowledge and practice on ethical guidelines among councillors, managers, and staff. Results from those surveys help determine needs for refresher training, updating of guidelines, and more. Records of breaches are kept, guidelines are promoted, followed, and disseminated. A declaration of commitment to the municipal ethical guidelines is incorporated into the work contract, which new staff are asked to sign, or when expiring contracts are renewed.
We have in the above listed a series of topics included in Haugesund's guidelines. Today we are mostly interested in two of these topics, transparency and conflict of interest, which we have elaborated on in two earlier videos. What does Haugesund say about transparency in their ethical guidelines?
In general terms, the municipality will promote transparency with disclosure or dissemination of information in all situations which do not require restriction. Several issues are discussed and spelled out in these guidelines. Transparency, managers and staff's right to expression, and their loyalty are some. Further issues are maintaining confidentiality when warranted and fulfilling the municipal's general duty to inform the public. They are all issued spelled out in these guidelines in the view of enhancing citizens' trust. Transparency furthermore entails keeping records of documents and communications for later consultation and verification. It is stressed that information provided on behalf of the municipality must be correct, trustworthy, and unambiguous.
Very well. But how does these guidelines deal with conflict of interest?
Guidelines state that conflicts between the interest of the municipality and its councillors, managers, or staff must be avoided. Conflicts of interest must be identified and declared by involved parties in decisions or casework. Failing to declare conflicts of interest is unacceptable and unlawful. Procedures are in place to prevent conflicts of interest to happen, and knowledge about roles and relations is used to secure fair, impartial, and transparent public business.
What are mentioned as possible conflicts of interest in Haugesund's guidelines?
Well, the guide lists the following possible conflicts of interest through. Now, although the list of roles or situations is not exhaustive, for instance, business relations to former employer or work colleagues. Second, remunerated board positions which might influence on work for the municipality. Personal economic interest resulting in competition with or breach of loyalty of the municipality. Family relations or friendship. And functions such as managing, volunteering, or board position in civil society's organization. In addition to describing the several topics, the guidelines also list relevant Norwegian legislation. The legislation provides a legal framework, and the guidelines help navigate these issues in practical terms.
We have also formulated a few questions which might be useful when Romanian municipalities and communes prepare ethical guidelines. Ethical guidelines will help councillors, managers, and staff to choose between alternatives within the law. Dilemmas can be identified through those questions we have formulated. The first one is it legal? You need to be able to answer yes, it must be legal. Is it a breach of your ethical guidelines? Is the action necessary? Is your judgment sound? Is it a good judgment? Is the decision wise? Will the choice impact negatively on the environment? Are you comfortable making this choice? Those questions reflect some of the thinking also in the 12 principles of the Council of Europe on good democratic governance, which we have referred to in the video and also in earlier videos, and on which basis KS has formulated its recommendations to municipalities on elaboration of ethical guidelines. This concludes our series of 4 small videos. It has been a pleasure joining you, and we wish you success with the seminars. Thank you so much.